I'm glad to give a word to my other good colleague, Professor Leif Kalev. He is a professor of political science here in Tallinn University, and his research interests encompass citizenship, democracy, state governance, migration policy, globalization, and transnationalization. He has held several key positions here in our university, and he has also worked for Estonian government, serving as the Deputy Secretary General on public order and migration policy, and as the Secretary General of the Ministry of the Interior. He has also been visiting research fellow at the University of Yale. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you. Now, maybe you remember from the morning session that we focused very much on the privacy aspects of rule of law. I think our second block will much more focus on public aspects, and it's of course related to privacy, so we have a common topic. But now we first will tackle the issue how to reconcile democracy with digitalization. And this is my overarching question in this presentation. To what extent we can reconcile democracy and digitalization with a view on the current and oncoming changes? And I will first briefly outline the concepts so we know what we are talking about. Then I go through the, I would say, main visions, future visions with regard to digital democracy. Here I'm much based on Jamie Susskind. And then I return to these key concepts on a more detailed level and discuss a generalizing view to what extent we can reconcile these two developments. So first, to broadly define what we are talking about. Digitalization is defined as the ongoing integration of digital technologies and digitized data across economy and society. Very broad definition. It can be made more precise in various ways. For example, Susskind himself defines it as increasingly capable systems, increasingly integrated technology, and increasingly quantified society. So we have some basic underlying processes. We know more and more of our lives can be recorded and stored as data. We have more and more powerful tools to use, analyze this data. And a recent development has been we also have more and more autonomous machines that can operate mostly independently of human beings. So we see a gradual network of non-human system emerging. And of course, such system needs a brain, and this is not yet fully developed, but this is what is generally referred to as speaking about artificial intelligence. So it is indeed a tremendous change. We don't know its exact future ways it will unfold. But at the same time, it builds on what we have. What are the current developments? What are the developments in near future? So we can make some sense of it. And one of the domains to make sense of it is democracy. Very simply put, democracy is the rule of the people. Lincoln very ambitiously defined it as the government of, by, and for the people. And it is a very broad definition. It tells us what is specific about democracy. Democracy is not freedom, democracy is not constitutionalism, rule of law, and so on. But, of course, actually it can be developed into many ways. To currently just keep with the mainstream, I would say democratic politics needs to involve some amount of pluralism, different groups, debating, competing, reaching compromises. And it also needs to have some prospect of a common future, because people lose motivation to participate if they don't believe it will have any meaning or any positive outcome. This is, of course, the liberal democratic mainstream I'm talking about. And, of course, we have different approaches. But also, this approach is actually well reconcilable with, for example, right-wing elitist concepts of elite competition. So we can currently live with such understanding of democracy as a rule of the people, with some pluralism and some belief in a common future that can be influenced. So how to reconcile these two concepts? A rather good contribution has been made by Susskind, and he discusses the possible futures of digital democracy. I would say these are near futures. We are talking maybe about 10 or 20 years. Later, it could be different. But we can grasp something for our immediate future from these perspectives. And Susskind reminds us that always when we have had major changes in technologies, especially in technologies of information and communication, we might expect political changes as well. It has been so, and we have very little ground to think it will be otherwise with the current digital transformation. So let's briefly go through these 5 visions he proposes. All have their pluses and minuses. To start with, deliberative democracy, based on discussions of the people, finding new knowledge together, reaching decisions together. Digitalization can support deliberation in many ways. It is actually the first real opportunity to bring people together irrespective of geographies. You much reduce the costs of time, travel, energy to have meaningful deliberations with people interested in the same things as you are. So, original visions of deliberative digital democracy have been very optimistic, especially, let's say, in 1990s, 2000s. Now, quarter a century later, we are quite pessimistic, I would say. We see people have fragmented into echo chambers, similarly minded people trying to get each other more and more heated. They can't engage into, let's say, pluralistic debates easily. They use colorful and unpleasant language. And furthermore, with the development of AI, we see that we already have digital participants in these echo chambers and discussions. And these so-called bots have had influence on many elections already. And we have little doubt they continue to have significant influence, often overcrowding human participants. So maybe you're in a discussion group, you have maybe 2 people you know, but you have 1,000 people who actually are bots. So hopes for deliberation are now, I would say, in a very pessimistic shape. I think we are too pessimistic now. We can improve from where we are currently. But of course, digitalization will not produce a magic cure for us as deliberating people. Direct democracy also has become possible for the first time in human history on a large scale, thanks to digital devices. Earlier, it was conceivable in small city-states. Now it is possible basically worldwide. We could imagine a system where people come and vote, for example, every evening or every end of a week, some time point. They have a set of questions and make directly decisions about them. This is technically possible. But here, I would say the main problem maybe is not even in digital domain, but in people themselves. Because if we really think that all the people should make informed decisions about the crucial aspects of life, can we really expect it from all of the people? Democracy as mass democracy has been much based on representation. And most of the people are not too often too active in mass democracy. Can we expect really from people to be active every day or every week in a constructive, informed, and knowledgeable manner? This is quite a challenge, I would say. Third scenario, wiki democracy. Here, it is imaginable that democracy will be much more based on co-creation. This means we have common tools for developing, for example, regulations or policy analysis, policy decisions. We can all bring our arguments in, our evidence in, we can propose formulations, and we can imagine not only like Google Docs sheets, but co-creative environments to really commonly develop rules for us. But of course, here the challenge is similar to the one in direct democracy. Will people really do it? And if yes, which proportion of people will devote themselves into the public activities? And if not all, and not always, who will decide when it's sufficient level of deliberation? Also, deliberation is in principle never-ending and ever-changing. So someone has to establish the point where the decision is made, a regulation is adopted. Who and on which grounds? Plus, when will be changed again? Next morning, or we have some time for implementation? So here, I would say the problems are also more linked to human characteristics, not digitalization itself. But it's not a straightforward way to a bright future as well. Data democracy is based on a very different approach. Here, the hope is possessing and processing huge amounts of data enables us to reach better decisions. We have more information, more detailed information. We have better ways of making sense of it, analyzing it. And this way, we get much better results. It is, to an extent, possible, especially in very focused aspects, where we have very concrete issues to tackle. But of course, the more and more you move into the question of goals, values, real choices for human beings, the more you feel uneasy if it's taken just mechanically based on data. So here, way forward is possible, but then it's a way of not freedom, human freedom as we know it currently. So pluses and minuses also in this scenario. And finally, AI-based democracy. This is, to an extent, building on all of these we were discussing earlier. AI can make sense of vast amounts of information. It can lead and conclude deliberative debates and so on. So, in a way, we can amplify our activities as human beings using AI. We can, for example, let AI produce us short, high-quality summaries of points to discuss. So we will be really knowledgeable in a small amount of time. We can delegate time-consuming and unpleasant tasks to AI. So we get more free time to use as we like. But, of course, here the problem is also about human freedom. We really, almost all of us don't know how AI operates in detail. And this way, we also don't know how it actually reflects and brings forward our ideas and preferences. We can only hope it is right. Plus, every element we delegate to AI is an element where human decision is not conceivable anymore. For example, if we think that these people who are not so interested in public affairs would delegate their voices, their votes to AI assistants, all our deliberations and decisions will be swiftly overcrowded. If we have, once again, 90% of participants and voters as AI duplicates of real people, the rest of 10% is probably quite lost in this reality. And the debates will be probably not too easy for human beings to follow. So, we have pluses and minuses in all scenarios, but we can't rely on one, and there is no easy way forward to democracy. Susskind himself generalizes that 3 of these scenarios in principle offer more human participation opportunities. But this needs much more human effort in public affairs. So deliberative, direct and wiki democracy can be significantly improved by digital assistance. But to be meaningful, human beings also need to make much more effort. The 2 other scenarios, data and AI democracy, are more related to having a benevolent and knowledgeable ruler. So actually here, human participation will be reduced, and maybe some best outcomes, more welfare, will be achieved this way. So now, building on that, what could we say about democracy in a more general way? I think it is pretty easy to understand that these wiki and deliberative and direct democracy scenarios offer a place for more democracy if we want to devote ourselves more as citizens. So it is well linked with a Republican conception of citizenship as being primarily political and public effort. If everyone behaves as a real citizen, we will easily have a stronger democracy in much more fields. But of course, Republican conception is not the mainstream nowadays. Currently, we have liberal democracy that emphasizes human freedoms, including freedom of choice to participate in public affairs. So, to what extent we could think that this second way, giving more relevance to these digital decision makers, is reconcilable with liberal democratic perspective. Here we need to briefly remind ourselves of the idea of the political as expressed in 20th and 21st century literature. So the political composes of three key aspects: politics, contestation and cooperation to define goals and share power and resources; policy, the actual development of plans of action and putting them into practice. So our goals will actually be reached or not in case of bad policy. And polity, the locus where these activities happen. They, of course, operate all together. So Mart actually showed us earlier how the locus will change from physical to digital domain. But of course, not in its entirety. But maybe a more important aspect of the concept of political is in fact the issue that all this politics, policy and polity has been understood as human-based. So human beings, based on their imperfect knowledge and intelligence and motivation, do the decisions. And they can make mistakes, suffer from these mistakes, and make better decisions. As human capacity is only partial, we can expect the big mistakes only seldom happen. So contemporary politics, policy and polity are much based on imperfection of human being and also creativity of human beings. And with this, we can return to the concept of democracy. This rule by the people is, in fact, possible to conceive in quite many ways. All of these are present or have historically been present in human practice. We could have an understanding of democracy as based on simple people, ordinary people. So the government should serve ordinary people vis-à-vis the elites. This is the, let's say, leftist concept of democracy, people's democracy. It can easily develop into the practice where a strong ruler, who is in fact not too democratic, will impose order, so the poorer people will win out and richer ones lose out. We also have the conception of democracy as the sovereignty of the people. So we have a strong country that represents its population and establishes itself in the world. When the social stratum conception is probably reflected by, let's say, Cuba, for example, or China, in fact, the sovereign democracies may be expressed by countries like Russia or Iran. Now, moving towards more Western-style conceptions, we have a participatory democracy that emphasizes rule of the people based on participating in institutions. In how many institutions you can participate meaningfully? Is it only elections or some others? What others? You have a detailed look. And then we have the conception of representative democracy that sees that individuals have diverse preferences and we need to have the elections as a mechanism of aggregating these preferences. So, four very different understandings of the rule of the people. And to add up to this, we also have the new idea of the new despotism as an alternative for democracy. John Keane, who was here speaking here 4 years ago, has been a major proponent of this. And he claims new despotisms are also very free in terms of personal choices, travel, economic activity, and so on. But a clear-cut group is always in power by softer or harder ways. It also recruits all the time new members from the general populace, so it achieves some rotation inside of the elite. So welfare is enhanced, maybe also digitalization is well used, and society achieves some level of welfare. Last, I think, 30 years have been a clear increase in the affluence of the new despotisms. If we think of China, it lives hugely better than 30, 40 years ago. So we actually have some options based on the more detailed view of the concept of democracy. I would say that the digitalization developments that abolish the ways for human agency to actually be the decision maker cannot be reconciled with the Western conceptions of democracy. They could be reconciled with, for example, new despotism, or these very left-wing or sovereigntist conceptions of democracy. But not Western democracy as having pluralism, competition, possibility of change in elite groups, not only selected recruitment within the elite. So I would say that these, let's say, simply progress-oriented avenues for digitalization and democracy, AI democracy and data democracy, if implemented fully, are not well reconcilable with democracy in its Western sense at all. In moderate ways, we can reap benefits, but pressed to the logical end, it will be really, really problematic for Western-style societies. But we shouldn't be afraid of using some elements based on a more detailed scrutiny. And for this, we just need to have key aspects under observation and readiness to remedy what starts to go wrong. So I would end for some implications. I think Western democracies need to find ways to maintain a meaningful human presence. Also liberal democratic, freedom-based scenarios. We need to ensure sufficient quality of information and knowledge opportunities. We can't be overcrowded by bots or AI in some other form. We need to pay much more time to the motivation of people to actually be democratic citizens, agents of democracy. But we have to be also reasonable with our expectations on what you expect from every people. So we have some ways forward, I would say, and we have no simple way forward. Thank you.